The first day Miss Angela Hart stepped into Oak Ridge High School, the halls fell silent, not with awe, but with disbelief. She was the first black teacher the school had ever hired, and that fact alone spread through the student body like wildfire. Not everyone said it out loud, but the looks, the smirks, the sidelong glances, they said enough. Angela walked into her classroom, her heart beating fast beneath her neatly pressed blouse. She had spent the night before preparing every detail, the lesson plan, the handouts, even the way she would introduce herself. "Good morning," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Ms. Hart, and I'll be your English literature teacher this year." A few students barely looked up. Others gave her a once-over, eyes narrowing, as if judging her worth just by her skin. It started subtly, a cough disguised as the N-word from the back row, a scribble on the whiteboard before she arrived, "Go back where you came from," books misplaced, desks left in disarray, laughter erupting when she turned her back. Angela tried to rise above it. She told herself it was just adolescent mischief, but each day the cruelty deepened. One afternoon, she opened her desk drawer to find a banana with a mocking note. "Your favorite, right?" She blinked hard, trying not to let the tears come in front of them. But it wasn't just the students. Some fellow teachers avoided her in the staff room. One whispered to another, not realizing Angela could hear. They only hired her to fill a quota. She won't last the semester. Angela had dreamed of this, of teaching young minds, of sharing her love for words and poetry. She had imagined decorating her classroom with Maya Angelou, quotes and inspiring kids to speak their truth. Instead, she spent her breaks in the bathroom, quietly crying into folded tissues, asking herself if she had made a mistake. But then came Jordan. He was a quiet boy, always sitting alone in the second row, never laughing when the others did. One day after class, as the last students filed out, he lingered behind. "Ms. Hart," he said softly, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how they treat you. It's not right." Angela looked at him, startled. "Thank you, Jordan," she said, her voice trembling. He hesitated. "My mum's black. I know what it's like. They treated her like that too, but she's the strongest person I know." For the first time in weeks, Angela felt something other than pain. She felt hope. That night, she sat down with a blank notebook. At the top, she wrote, "This is not how my story ends." The fire in her heart wasn't out, not yet. Angela Hart stood in front of her class. The next morning with her head held a little higher. Something in her had shifted, not enough to erase the hurt, but enough to hold it differently. Jordan's words still echoed in her mind. "She's the strongest person I know." But the rest of the class hadn't changed. If anything, their mockery became more creative. One morning, she found her carefully prepared copies of To Kill a Mockingbird in the trash. Another time, someone had photoshopped her face onto a monkey and printed out the image. Taping it to her desk, her hands trembled when she pulled it off, breathing heavily to hold herself together. She reported it. She tried. But the principal, Mr. Lanson, shrugged with tired eyes. "Teenagers act out," he said. "Are you sure you're not being too sensitive? You know, cultural differences." Angela couldn't believe what she was hearing. Too sensitive. Was hate now just a misunderstanding? Still, she kept going. She taught every day, even if most of the students ignored her. She wore vibrant colors, trying to bring brightness to the dim classroom. She poured passion into every lecture. Her love for literature wasn't just about books. It was about stories that had saved her as a child. Stories that reminded her that her voice mattered. But being strong every day hurt. Behind the scenes, she was unraveling. Some days she couldn't eat. Nights were sleepless. She thought about quitting more times than she could count. One day, things hit a breaking point. A fire alarm rang in the middle of her fourth period class. It turned out to be a prank, pulled deliberately by one of her students, just to disrupt her lesson. As everyone gathered outside, someone in the crowd whispered, "Probably her fault. Bet she couldn't figure out how to work the heater." Laughter followed, harsh, cold. Angela walked away, around the side of the building where no one could see, and let the tears fall. Not quiet ones this time. Real sobs, deep, hurting, broken. She pulled out her phone to call her mother, the one person who had always reminded her she could overcome anything. But she paused. What would Mum say if she knew I was thinking of giving up? Angela looked up at the cloudy sky. Her breath came in shaky waves. "God," she whispered, "I came here to help these kids. But I don't know how to stay when I feel so unwanted." Later that week, Jordan left something on her desk. A hand-drawn sketch of a phoenix rising from flames. At the bottom, he'd written, "They don't know who you really are, but I do." That drawing stayed with her. On the hardest days, she would trace its lines with her finger, reminding herself she was not alone, that at least one child was watching. And learning, she started to change her lessons. No more dull worksheets. She began assigning poems by Langston Hughes, speeches by Martin Luther King Jr., excerpts from Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, James Baldwin. Most students rolled their eyes, but a few started listening. The battle wasn't over, but something small had begun. Angela Hart stood before her students, with a quiet fire in her eyes. The days of weeping in silence were not gone, but something in her soul had begun to stir like an ember refusing to die. She had taught them Shakespeare and Steinbeck, but now she was teaching them survival, identity, courage. In her next lesson, she placed a quote on the board before anyone entered. "Prejudice is a burden that confuses the past, threatens the future, and renders the present inaccessible." Maya Angelou. Most students ignored it. A few snickered, but Jordan read it slowly and nodded to himself. Angela began opening her class with questions no one had ever asked them before. Have you ever felt judged before anyone knew you? Have you ever been silent while someone else was mocked? At first, the room remained quiet. But one day, a girl in the back named Clara, the same one who used to laugh the loudest, hesitated before speaking. "My cousin wears a hijab," she said softly. "People call her a terrorist. It hurts." Angela listened, not as a teacher, but as a human being. "Thank you, Clara," she said gently. "This class is a safe place for truth." That moment cracked something open. Soon, Angela invited her students to write personal essays, not on literary themes, but on who they were beneath the surface, what they feared, what they hid. The walls they had built between themselves and her began to shift. Just a little, but not everyone welcomed the change. One afternoon, after an emotional discussion about racism in literature, Angela found her car tires slashed in the staff parking lot. A note taped to the windshield read, "Stop poisoning our kids." That night, she sat on the floor of her apartment, staring at the ceiling. Her mother called. "Baby," her mother said, "you don't have to prove anything to them." Angela replied quietly, "But I do. I have to prove it to me." The next day, she marched into school in a bold red blouse and afro curls free. She was done dimming herself. That week, she announced an open mic poetry session. "You all have a voice," she told her students. "Even if it shakes, it still matters." At first, no one signed up. Then Jordan did. Clara followed, and slowly, one by one, others joined. The night of the poetry reading, the library was full. Parents came. Other teachers, even Principal Lanson sat in the back. Angela introduced the event. "This is not just about poetry," she said. "This is about being heard in a world that often tries to silence you." When Jordan stepped up to the mic, he cleared his throat and read his poem titled "Skin." "They said your skin was dirty, but I saw how it shone. They tried to erase you, but you became a poem of your own." The room fell silent. Then applause. Real applause. Angela wiped her eyes. She wasn't invisible. Anymore, she had become what she always hoped to be: a mirror, a guide, a spark. She had become the lesson. Word about the poetry night traveled fast. Within days, Angela Hart became the talk of Oak Ridge High, but for the first time, not as a target of ridicule. Something had shifted. Students began lingering after class to ask questions. A few started actually reading the books she assigned, and some, like Clara and Jordan, began standing up to the same peers who once laughed with them. But not everyone celebrated the change. The next morning, Angela received an email marked urgent. It was from Principal Lanson. Subject: concerns about curriculum and classroom activities. When she arrived in his office, he sat with his fingers folded tightly. "There've been complaints," he said flatly. "Some parents think your teaching is too political, that you're stirring division." Angela blinked. "I'm teaching poetry, history, truth." He sighed. "It's a public school, Ms. Hart. We need to be careful not to push certain narratives." She felt her throat tighten. "Is truth now a narrative?" "I'm asking you to tone it down," he said. "Stick to the textbook. No more of these." He glanced at the event flyer on his desk. "Expression nights." Angela stood slowly. "With all due respect, sir," those students finally spoke. "I will not silence them now." The next week, a rumor spread that Angela might be fired. Students whispered it in the halls, unsure of what was true. But Jordan came to her room during lunch, furious. "They're really going to do that? After everything you've done for us?" Angela didn't answer right away. She looked at the photo of Maya. Angelou taped to her bulletin, bored, and smiled faintly. "I'm not here for their comfort," she said. "I'm here for your courage." Jordan pulled out his phone. "Then we're not letting you go down alone." That evening, Jordan started an online petition. "Keep Ms. Hart. Let truth be taught." Clara shared it. Then others. Within 48 hours, it had over 2,000 signatures, including alumni, local activists, and even parents who were moved by what their children told them. The local news picked it up. A small headline at first: "Black teacher faces pushback for teaching real history." But it grew. Angela didn't ask for any of it. But when a reporter came to interview her, she spoke honestly. "I came here to teach English. I stayed to teach humanity. If that's controversial, then maybe we all have homework to do. The school board called an emergency meeting. The room was packed. Some parents stood up and demanded her removal. But then Clara took the mic. She was the first teacher who saw me, she said, her voice shaking, and she made me see myself. One by one, students came forward. Testimonies of growth, healing, change. Angela sat at the back, tears running silently down her cheeks. This was the victory no exam could measure. Angela Hart stood outside the school board meeting after it ended, her breath caught between hope and fear. The vote was in, and though it wasn't unanimous, the board ruled in her favor. She could stay. But more than that, they issued a new guideline. Culturally inclusive education would be encouraged. Her voice had cracked open a door, not just for her, but for every teacher who came after her. For every student who sat quietly wondering if the world would ever see them. The next morning, she walked into her classroom to find something waiting. The whiteboard was covered with dozens of sticky notes, all from students. Thank you for not giving up. You made me love books again. I'm sorry for how I treated you before. You taught me how to be human. Angela read every single one, her fingers brushing the words as tears filled her eyes. These weren't just apologies, they were confessions, promises, and signs of something deeper. Transformation. Jordan was already at his desk when she turned around. He held a small box and handed it to her. Inside was a necklace, a tiny golden phoenix. You rose, he said softly. And so did we. Angela couldn't speak. She just pulled him into a quiet hug. Later that week, Angela received a letter in the mail. It was from the teacher who would take over the next grade, Ms. Rebecca Shaw, newly hired and also black. I heard your story, the letter said. Because of you, I knew it was possible to walk into that school and stand tall. Thank you for making room for the rest of us. Angela smiled. She had once walked into Oak Ridge, high, terrified, and alone. But she was no longer either. Years passed. Some of her students graduated and went on to write, to teach, to protest, to become the change they once resisted. Jordan became a teacher himself. Clara worked with youth in underserved communities. And every year, on the first day of school, Angela placed a new quote on her board. That year's quote was, "I am not what you think I am. You are what you think I am, unknown." She greeted her new class with the same warmth, the same fire, and the same unwavering love. They didn't know her yet, but they would. Because Ms. Angela Hart wasn't just a teacher. She was a mirror, a spark, a revolution wrapped in grace. And the color of her skin, it was the color of her courage. Tell me in comments from where. Are you watching and what time is now there? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. For more powerful stories that stay with you long after they end. Until next time, take care and keep the stories alive.